Across the Spider-Verse has left quite a huge cliffhanger, possibly the biggest cliffhanger in cinema history, leaving us all begging to know what happens next. And many of us, after leaving the theaters, immediately started theorizing what would happen in the grand finale of the Spider-Verse trilogy. And in this video, I will be sharing my theories and what I would love to see the most in Beyond the Spider-Verse. So let's start at the start. What should the opening scene of the film be? The first two films opened quite similarly. They both had really suspenseful music and sequences of logos that echo throughout the theater and immediately left your heart racing before the film even started. But what if this film is the opposite of that? This is called Beyond the Spider-Verse after all. It's the film that explores other worlds which resides outside the Spider-Verse, the main one being Earth 42, which was introduced at the end of Across the Spider-Verse. So the first two films opened with the Spider-Person, Peter Parker in Into the Spider-Verse and Gwen Stacy in Across the Spider-Verse. Now one way they can handle this is by choosing another Spider-Person to open the film again. It could be Miles Morales, as he hasn't had his own intro yet despite being his trilogy, or it can even be Miles Gonzalo Morales, which would fit in the theme of exploring other worlds and still gives a Miles an intro, especially since this one was supposed to become Spider-Man, which is kind of poetic. But I think the best way to open this would be to show Spot's perspective. Let me explain. In Across the Spider-Verse, there was a deleted scene where Spot went to the bar with no name, which is a common hideout for spider villains. In this scene, we learn that he is being bullied by the other villains because of his appearance and powers, saying he can never be a villain like the rest of them, representing how after Spot was rejected from civilization, he turned to a life of crime where even he was rejected there as well. This scene was cut for obvious reasons of not being able to fit well into the pacing and structure of the final film, but it did make an appearance on one of Miguel's screens in the Spider HQ. This would be a great way to open the film, as it reminds us of Spot and his motives, as he wasn't very present for the majority of the last half of Across the Spider-Verse, but will also create that relatability between Miles and Spot, setting that character arc in the start of the film, since a lot of people still think his only motive was that he got bit by a bagel. Bit by a bagel. Since a lot of people still thinks his only motive was that he got hit by a bagel. So this will show how Spot is in the same situation as Miles, getting rejected from the villain side of the world, while Miles is being rejected from the hero side of the world. I would have the film start in the bar with no name, with Spot struggling to convince everyone that he can be a real villain and getting laughed at and kicked out, but then he returns back to the bar after being supercharged by the Collider, and then we get a dark montage of Spot killing all the villains who laughed at him, and then with that, the tone of the scene shifts to be more dramatic and suspenseful, relating to the start of the first two films, and then the scene transitions to directly where we left off at the Spider-Man vs. Prowler moment. This brings me to what I want next. As Miles is stuck in Earth 42 and Gwen and the Spider Gang is trying to rescue him, the last thing I want to see is Gwen opening a portal in Earth 42 and getting him out. That will be the most laziest ever. Instead, this is how I would love it to pan out. I think up to the first hour of the film should be primarily set on Earth 42. I would love Miles and Miles G to battle out their differences, hopefully getting another chase segment where Miles runs into the villains that rule this universe, but slowly they come to understand each other and learn to work together, and Miles will finally lend a hand in saving his alternate dad, giving him the chance to do something about it where he failed to do so in his own world. Miles will follow on his passion of wanting to make his own interdimensional watch, but this time not to see his friends like his original dream was, but this time he wants to make one to save his parents. And if you're wondering how two kids can manage this, well, I have a solution for that too. Miles G is known to be older than Miles, having a deeper voice and a slightly older face, but because it is revealed in his room that he is a tinkerer and loves to make gadgets in this universe that helps him become a better Prowler, I think it's safe to say Miles G is further in his studies of becoming a scientist. And you might say that the reason Miles wanted to become a scientist in Earth 1610 was because he wanted to meet his friends again, but seeing as he was studying alternate dimensions way before he got bit by a spider in the first film, I think it's safe to also say that they were both on the same path of wanting to be a scientist. So combining our Miles' knowledge of the Spider-Verse with Miles Gonzalo's knowledge of technology, they will work together to make an interdimensional watch to save their dad. Meanwhile, all of this, Gwen, the Spider Gang and the other allies they pick up along the way have been occupied by Miguel and his forces in a Spider-Man civil war over the concept of the Canon Events. I also hope we get to see more Miles variants such as Earth 1048 Miles. Okay, this is for my own pleasure, but it would be really cool to see though, right? But one thing is for sure, we better be seeing Tom Holland's Peter Parker. It will make so much sense having him on Miles and Gwen's team, as he was in the exact same situation where he risked the whole multiverse just to help his loved ones. Some other cameos would also be really fitting to see, such as Insomniac Peter joining Miguel's team, as he was the one who let Aunt May die to save the rest of the city, and he absolutely understands the sacrifices that needs to be made for the greater good. And also in a world where he witnessed the hero Miles became after losing his dad. Maybe even Spectacular Spider-Man as well, who has never stopped looking out for everyone throughout his show and would take Gwen's side. Anyways, the concept of the Spider-Man Civil War is a big one that can go so many different routes, but moving on, Gwen, Miles and Peter would reunite and work together along with Prowler Miles to take down the Spider Society and the Spot. In terms of the Canon Event, in my opinion, one of two things should happen, but in both options, two factors remain the same. I firmly believe that Jeff isn't the one to sacrifice himself, and Mayday is the kid in the canon. In every ASM 90 event, they save a kid wearing red, and Peter B decided to bring a kid to the fight where she is wearing a red Spider-Man hat. Now, the one of two things that could happen is that option 1, Miguel O'Hara dies saving Miguel O'Hara dies saving Mayday, giving him a redemption in his character arc, or the option that I am leaning towards is that Peter B dies saving his own daughter. It would be the perfect way to end his character, as he went from being the lowest to lows to finally making everything work in his universe, and he protects all of that by sacrificing himself to save what he worked hard for, being his family. However, I understand that the whole point of this finale is to prove Miguel wrong, and that the canon events aren't what holds up the Spider-Verse, which Gwen proved at the end of Across the Spider-Verse since she convinced her dad to step down from being captain. Having Miles' canon event be disrupted would be anticlimactic, as it's something everyone would be expecting, unless they go for my third option where they kill off Mayday. Having Peter B sacrifice himself could be a great twist in the film and could serve as an emotional anchor for Miles to start going all out on Spot for killing his mentor, where Gwen and the others would convince him to stop. Similar to No Way Home, I know, but this would help Miles to control his anger, and this whole experience would also teach Prowler Miles to be good rather than bad. Gwen would still prove Miguel wrong with the proof of what happened in her world and hopefully Pevita's world, and maybe further proof throughout Beyond the Spider-Verse, and they would all go back home. Gwen and Miles will decide it's better to just stay friends, Miles' family is safe, and Miles G takes his experience to step up and be the first vigilante of his universe against the Empire of Villains. In terms of other things I would love to see in this film, other than story predictions, are some symbiotes. This is obviously a huge part of the Spider-Man world, and we haven't seen any yet. Hopefully Venom exists in Earth 42, and hopefully we get a cameo of him. One major thing I'd love to see is more to do with the editing. I would love to see a lot of match cuts. This is where two shots are linked up by something common in both, such as that amazing multiverse shot in Everything Everywhere All at Once where Evelyn is screaming in every dimension with her face remaining the same in the center of the screen. This was used a lot in the first film, but more for comedy purposes, and this would be insane to see in more action sequences, as not only does this fit really well within the creative style of the Spider-Verse films, but also fits in perfectly with the multiverse storyline. It would be perfect, especially in the Spider-Verse Civil War. Let me know in the comments how you think Beyond the Spider-Verse will pan out and what you're looking forward to seeing the most. If you have enjoyed this video and you want to see more like this one, then make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like if you've enjoyed it, and I shall see you guys in the next one.